Mrs. Pam Morris Walker, if you would, please speak so we can make sure that we have the sound right.
Okay.
Okay.
This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it.
Amen.
Stevenson is 29 minutes.
Okay, can you hear her? If you can say something else.
Just have her keep
If
talking
you can
for a
just
few
keep
seconds.
talking for a few seconds, just 1, 2, 3, you can count.
A little bit heavy, 103rd to the verge.
We just always have to check.
Lakeshore Drive later this morning. Road work
It's the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in
The
it.
Devil's
Magnify
Advocates
the
with
Lord
Tom and
with me.
Cruz. Don't know if you've
Let
caught
us
this.
exalt his name together. God is good all the time.
I love
And all
it.
the time, God is good.
Okay, I got her.
Okay, fantastic. I love this woman. I just love her. Oh my gosh, I love you. Ooh. Okay, so let me just pull this and thank you. And I hope you will come back again and again and again because
I'll be happy to.
I would love to have you involved here. I really would.
I'd love to.
And I'd be honored. I'd be honored. Absolutely honored.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. You sound good.
Oh, thank you so much. And let me do this. Pulling a few more of these. Okay. Okay.
You will too.
Paid for by because facts matter. You
Okay, how much time do we have? 3 minutes?
We have 2 minutes.
Okay,
Do you need
thank
one
you.
more?
I sure do.
Okay, I'll get one more in for
I
you.
appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you. Madam Board Operator. Okay, so we got
One of the
that.
most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military veterans.
We have about 2.5 now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We can fulfill their journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Okay.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by...
If you could look at my text just really quickly.
Okay, I will.
Sacrifice that changed my life forever. I remember the day I came home because of my
Okay,
injuries,
thank you so very much.
It wasn't right for me anymore.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
The small bathrooms,
Okay.
the shelves
I
out of reach
appreciate
when
that.
in a wheelchair. Every day was full of obstacles. I felt trapped. I remember a better day. The day my family received a specially adapted custom home from Homes for Our Troops. That day changed everything. Now we have a safe and acceptable home to enjoy the freedom I fought. This place, our home, is exactly what we needed to rebuild our lives.
Homes for Our Troops builds and donates specially adapted custom homes nationwide for severely injured post-9/11 veterans and enables them to rebuild their lives.
We have about 1 minute.
Okay. We'll just stop pulling some of these, and then I'll pull them at the commercial break.
Teachers are taking our tomorrow, starting their students on journeys that will change the course of history. Right now, in a classroom somewhere in the United States, there's a teacher inspiring a future scientist who will make preventing pandemics their life's work. Sharpening the minds of an aspiring environmentalist who will help combat climate change and generating possibilities to a student who will be the first in their family to graduate college. It all starts with teachers who
30 seconds.
Okay.
who reinvent education for the future.
My gospel sister, I love you so much.
Every child, regardless of
And I
I
am
love you,
so
and there's
glad.
absolutely nothing you can do about it.
I love this woman. I love her. She is my friend.
All right, 10 seconds. Stand
Okay.
by. We're going to have a wonderful, wonderful show this morning.
Yes, let the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight. Oh Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Thank you so much.
Change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's a joy to be with you today. 2 weeks from today, the midterms. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I hope you will meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook. Remember, it's Santita Jackson and Friends. That's the only place I can accept friends. The Santita Jackson page is just a landing page. They won't let me accept any more friends there. In fact, they're kicking you off. So please go to Santita Jackson and Friends. They won't do it there. And then, of course, the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. That's where I really need you to go. Sending much love to you today. We've got a lot to talk about today. A lot. Hand hygiene. It is so important. In fact, when you teach your children to keep their hands clean, and if you teach them how to wash their hands properly, it can cut down on illness in children as young as kindergarten. Think about that, everybody. Dr. Shanina Knighton will be talking about that. Then we're going to be talking with Dwight McKee and attorney C.K. Hoffler about what's happening in Georgia. Why is Georgia the race that everyone is focusing in on? There are so many factors with the Stacey Abrams, Brian Kemp race, and with the Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock race. And then what about jobs, everybody? That appears to be the number one issue driving people to the polls. They are already breaking records. They had a little more than 100,000 people who participated in the midterms in 2018. In 2014. Then it was more than 400,000 in 2018. Now more than 800,000 so far have been voting early in Georgia. I mean, it's just phenomenal, but it's happening all over the country. People are very, very engaged. Look, make sure that you're still registered, though, because people have been purged from the rolls at the same time. They've had their names challenged. So go to vote.org, vote.org, and tell your friends about it. That way you can find out within a couple of minutes if you have been purged from the rolls, and you can get re-registered. Not there, but you can go get re-registered, and then you can find out where you can vote. You do recall that in Chicago, we closed more than 100 precincts, which impacted more than 100,000 voters during our June primary just this year. It's happening all over the country. In 2018, in Kentucky, there was one super polling site that was open for 660,000 people. So being registered to vote, and then making sure that you know where you can vote. With COVID and everything, so much has changed. And then we'll be talking with Wheeler Coleman, one of the leading figures in the world of cybersecurity and tech. And he's an African American. He comes from Inglewood. He comes from the West Side. And guess what? He didn't do too well in his first computer class. Then he went back and took it again and aced it. And he has not looked back. He's one of the leading figures in that world. He's going to talk to you about what you can do to get a job there as we are looking for jobs and as we're looking to change careers. And then, of course, John Nichols will be talking to us about these big races, because everyone wants to talk about the primaries and the midterms. So these are not the primaries. These are the midterms. We're going to be electing a whole new House of Representatives. 35 or 36 U.S. senators. It's a big deal. Governors all over the country. This is a big deal, everybody. Everything can change. And we're paying attention to the down ballot races as well. We should, because you determine who goes to Washington in your state capital. Think about that. I'm Santita Jackson. Let's get to some of these headlines. Chicago is going to be 63 degrees, positively spring-like. We love it. And rainy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 51 degrees, partly cloudy. And In the NFL, well, the Bears were triumphant. Yay, 33-14 over the Patriots. We love that. In the NBA, the Spurs won 15, the Timberwolves 106, and the Bulls 120, and the Celtics 102. There's a new prime minister in Great Britain, everybody. They're welcoming a new prime minister today, Rishi Sunak, who won the latest conservative leadership contest. Let's hope that he lasts longer than what they said. Liz Truss, who just left, they said that her tenure was as long as that of a lettuce. Ow. Well, he's taking over during a rough period for the country's economy following a disastrous 6-week tenure led by Liz Truss. She's the shortest serving prime minister in modern British history, everybody. She delivered her farewell speech, and then he came onto the scene, and he has been meeting with King Charles to get confirmation of his government. The Biden administration it should be allowed to carry out its student loan debt relief plan while litigation of the public policy plays out. In a new brief filed with the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which is considering a legal challenge to the program brought by 6 Republican-led states that would enable you to get $20,000 of student debt relief. The administration defended the policy and argued that there were serious flaws with the challenger's case, everybody. In St. Louis, a school shooting. A 16-year-old girl and a 60-year-old woman were killed Monday in a shooting at a high school in St. Louis. May God bless these two souls. Officers arrived at the school 4 minutes after the first 9/11 call, and it took them 8 minutes to find the gunman. God bless them, one and all. Today we have someone special giving us the good news. I'm so excited she's with us today. She's an icon in the Black church, in the world of Christendom. No one stands higher, no one's shoulders are broader than this great woman of God. And we're so glad that she calls Chicago home. Indeed, she is an interfaith counselor and consultant. She's the author of a magnificent book that I hope that you will get, 57 Days, Wait for a New Heart. I'm going to bring her back so she can talk about that story. And she is your gospel sister, none other than the great Pam Morris Walton. How you doing, my gospel sister?
I am doing wonderful. I'm on God's wake-up list this morning again.
Hey, I love that. I love her. 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 And you know, you've got some good news. I mean, indeed, you're a walking testimony. You have a new heart. And you have a wonderful, wonderful husband who loves you, takes care of you, and as you take care of him. We've been so blessed to have you. Just be this great woman of God, so beautiful, so elegant, so kind, and just really, Albertina Walker, who was your godmama, just loved you to pieces.
Yes.
Absolutely. And mine too. And mine too. She was the only one who could call me Santina, and I would just have to smile. She said, well, you are Santina, and I'm Albertina, and that's it. I said,
I was in the
okay.
walnut room at lunch with you when she did that one time. We were sitting upstairs at Macy's in Marshall Fields.
At Marshall Fields in the walnut room. That's right. That's right. Oh my gosh.
And you just put her in smile.
I just said, well, for you, I will be Santina. It's all right. It's all right. I just love her. I love her. I love her, and I love you. And, in this segment, we try to give people good news, which is what you do all the time. Just greeting you makes me feel better. And what word do you want to share with us today?
Today, I want to share, because of so much going on in our country, in our city, in our community, we just want to pray about it. We want to believe and pray about it. Have you ever wished you could talk to God on speed dial?
Absolutely.
We need to meet God on speed dial. That is a stored number that can be dialed by pressing one key, just one key. We need prayer for each other, the family, personal prayers, corporate prayers, again, for our city, our country, our community, relationships, personal needs. The only answer today is prayer for everything continuing and confronting us. How about persistent prayer? You remember in Luke 18, the widow bothered the unjust judge so much, so often that the unjust judge couldn't keep ignoring her because she kept bothering him. She was consistent and she wanted justice. Can you imagine if she was standing before a right judge? She wouldn't have had to go through any of that. God will do the impossible. Let's do the possible and pray.
Amen.
Let's do the impossible. That's what he will do. He will do the impossible. We need to do the possible and just pray. You know, turn the heat up and let me give you an example. Have you ever had a wrinkled shirt or skirt or blouse to press and you had the ironing board in place and you actually had the iron sitting there, and then all of a sudden you began to press the shirt and the skirt or the blouse and the wrinkles are still there, and then you pressed it again and they were still there? Did you remember that the iron has to be plugged in? It has to be turned on, and that the heat has to come up, and then it presses out the wrinkles and it becomes wrinkle-free. You know, that's how we have to do our prayers. We have to turn them up and put some heat behind them. So many of us are hurting and looking for answers. Turn the heat up and pray. I am proof that God answers prayers. I am a walking miracle. I am a woman that had a journey from an advanced congestive heart failure diagnosis to transplant and inpatient recovery, and was 57 days in the hospital where I lived with myself. And I will tell you my story because I wrote a book about it. You think it's hopeless? It's not hopeless. There is nothing impossible. Keep believing God. I'm reminded by a song, Santita, by the incomparable Vanessa Bell Armstrong. She said, prayer still works. We've come this far by faith. So pick up your faith and don't be late. I'm here to tell you about the good news. The good news, if you know how to pray the situation out. Prayer is the answer. There is no doubt. Prayer brings about results. The storyteller, Dorothy Norwood, said, somebody prayed for me. They had me on my mind. And you know what they did? They took a little time and prayed for me. Moses Tyson gave us a rendition of a song entitled Pray for Me. Because prayer is a privilege. It's a conversation. We need to exercise it. So let me just say, find a quiet place, a peaceful place. Set aside some time and do what you know is right. And I don't feel no ways tired. I've come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy. I don't believe he brought me this far to leave me. So you can live victoriously when you pray about it. That's it.
That's all.
That's it.
Pam, your gospel sister, Pamela Morris Walton, author of 57 Days. Get the book, Wait for a New Heart. I'm going to have you come back one morning so that you can talk to us about the book and about your journey, Waiting for a New Heart. I told you there's so many sermons in that, and we're just grateful to you for a woman of God who works with all people of all faiths. And whether you're in or out of faith, she's going to work with you. She's going to love you. And we just thank God for all that you have done for us down through the years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can't wait to have you back.
The show. I love you for letting me be a part. Thank you.
Oh, you're not just a part. You're my mentor and inspiration. So there's that. So let's just keep on going. What you talking about? Oh, gosh. Like, I love her. Pam Morris, everybody. Pam Morris Walton. And we thank God for her. We thank God for her today. And get the book, 57 Days. Wait for a New Heart. You don't want to miss it, everybody. It will bless you. Everybody, we're talking about this, Mrs. Walton. We've been talking with Dr. Shanina Knighton, someone who you can bring in onto the various platforms in which we can see you, hear you, feel you. She's an infection preventionist. She's a walking testimony herself, registered nurse, the first person in her family to complete high school, let alone get a PhD. And she is one of the world's few infection preventionists. And she said yesterday, look, I am really bothered by this casual approach that we have to hand washing. And I read this article last night, The Great Pandemic Hand Washing Blooper. I mean, it's just not been pushed enough. You wanted to talk about hand washing today. You've got the floor, Dr. Knighton.
Good morning. And I was going to say, Santita, like the problem is like we tend to think more is more. And when I say that, there's this notion that simple things don't matter when in fact they do. For example, all of us have been in a situation of where we've taken a vitamin or we've done like one simple practice, right? Where that was getting up every day and you meditate for 5 minutes, but then you don't meditate for, let's say, maybe 2-3 weeks, and you're trying to figure out maybe why you off, and you don't realize that something so small had such a tremendous impact. I'm mentioning that because like when we think about the notion of hand hygiene, if everyone did it correctly, I can guarantee you that there would be a drastic reduction in the amount of people that end up sick. I know people that during the pandemic, because they were so fearful of getting COVID, that they actually reported that they were less sick than what they had ever been in their history in terms of like their health. And that is because they were vigilantly thinking about what is it that I'm doing in terms of my hand hygiene when I'm out in certain environments, what I do. There's this heightened awareness of people coughing and sneezing around you. You're paying attention to how people are preparing your food and doing certain things with their hands. So when we talk about hand hygiene, I just want to put a visual in someone's head. We are all pretty social people, and 9 times out of 10 may go out and, let's say, grab something to eat. How do you feel if the person that's preparing your food does not clean their hands correctly after using the restroom? Meaning that we know if only 3 to 6% of people clean their hands correctly, imagine someone preparing your food after restroom use not cleaning their hands correctly. That's what I mean when I say that we tend to downplay the role of hand hygiene. The other piece is if you think about the fact that someone may be preparing, let's say, raw items on a counter. You can't mix raw meat, right, with vegetables and then just eat it and not expect potentially a foodborne illness. There's a process of proper washing of hands when you are preparing food, specifically raw meat, just to give an example. If your children are outside playing and they come inside of the house and they were just playing in mud and they were just playing in dirt and playing with worms, like, yes, environmentally that may help them and it may build up their immune system. But what happens if they picked up some harmful fungus or some harmful bacteria and they brought it in the house and then they proceed to eat without proper hand hygiene? I'm using all of these examples just to say that when we look up and the CDC director mentions how important hand hygiene is, and we have scientists, which is so unfortunate, that are saying that, oh my gosh, I can't believe she got up here and said hand hygiene when we have masks, when we have vaccines, when we have this. But let's be honest, the person that got to give you your vaccine needs to clean their hands before they put that needle in your arm. The person that's wearing the mask should wash their hands properly when putting on the mask and when taking the mask off. Those are just examples of what I mean when I say proper hand washing, as well as the importance of hand washing. And Santita, I think the thing is that's very important to reflect upon is when we think about our care and when even your audience, like if they tend to think about their day-to-day activities, I guarantee you that when they think about how important hand hygiene is, there are certain things that they have just buffered in because we've done it out of routine. But if we seriously think about the fact, are we literally taking 20 to 25 seconds to make sure that we are covering all surfaces of our hands, completely wetting our hands, having friction, and drying them properly, I can guarantee you that some of us are going to say, I'm so much on the run that I forget that important practice. And if you're forgetting that important practice, then how does that show up in your health?
Well, I have a friend who just got sick, and it turns out that when they were trying to track his illness, he had E. coli in his system. And one of our mutual friends said, wait a minute, you can find that in feces. And this person is ill. So it's like, wait a minute, someone who's with him, we just speculated, they've not been washing their hands properly. It's just speculation, but I think we have to really, really be careful. I don't think you can emphasize that enough. In fact, it was not emphasized at the beginning of this pandemic, and here we are. I mean, and we're still having this fight with the head of the CDC and just everybody within this scientific community. We can't get a straight answer, but I tell you what, we get it from you. Wash your hands, everybody, and wash them properly. Wash your hands and wash them properly. All the ways that you make us think. Could we continue this discussion tomorrow, Dr. Knighton?
We can, and I just want to point out, too, I'm not downplaying at all any of the other mechanisms. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that this particular mechanism has been downplayed.
Yes.
So I'm not talking about the fact that there aren't other forms of transmission that are not just touch-based, but it is it's a risk-lowering approach that makes a big difference.
Okay. That's it, everybody. Please wash your hands, the webbing of your fingers, under your fingernails, all of that. Take 30 seconds. It can keep you healthy. Let's talk about what's happening in Georgia, everybody. Call us. What do you think is going to happen in this election? Could Herschel Walker pull it out? You have a lot of undecideds, but then you have record-breaking turnout. Back in just a minute on the Santita Jackson Show. Thank you, sweetie.
You're welcome.
You had me finding all these articles on hand hygiene. Yeah, I did.
Yesterday, I don't know if you had a chance. I was so upset at how Twitter was just dragging that poor lady the other day. It's like she mentioned that this is literally the protective measure. And I keep reminding people, literally, we almost back at square one, believe it or not. And it's not to downplay the vaccines or anything like that. But we're walking into a twindemic right now, Santita. And I think tomorrow it's going to be very important to help people understand how is it that we know what we know when we know, right? And so when we are actually, people don't realize this, but when the United States, right now, how we in our fall month, Australia is in their winter, okay? And their climate is more reflective of ours. Mm-hmm. When we are in our winter, they're in their spring. When we're in our spring, they're in their summer. So it's not the full story, but literally when you see their patterns over there, we tend to follow right behind, and I'm talking about closely behind. Their flu numbers right now is 4 times the rate of what they were last year. Their COVID numbers is up, and I'm trying to let people know that this twindemic is a real thing, of where essentially COVID and flu is a problem this year. But we're seeing that evident in other places. So then when people are like, well, that's going on in Europe, that's not happening over here. No, their climate comes before ours in certain areas. Like Australia's 4 seasons come before ours. So, and listen, and they got patient hand hygiene over there. So just imagine that now they're taking care of everything that they're supposed to do, got a little bit more better mechanisms, and they're still having their high numbers. We're going to be in the same situation, and we don't realize it. And so if we don't have vaccines to help us, what protective mechanisms can keep us safe if we can't stay home?
Well, I mean, if you want more time to talk about it tomorrow, just let me know.
I will. Unfortunately, I still got to only do 10 minutes. I'm going to travel again tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Listen, that's what I said, but I'm trying to get it. I'm being intentional. I'm trying to get it all out of the way now, so that way I'm not having to go nowhere during those winter months when I know these numbers don't peak.
Good luck, honey.
I'm being very intentional about what it is that I'm doing.
These people do not care. They want you on the road, and that's all there is to it. Ugh.
They do, but that's what I care. And I'm telling you that, literally, I'm getting all my travel out of the way until it's time so I can go in and hibernate like everybody else. And when I say hibernate, that don't mean that I don't have to be out. I'm just not going to be out as much because I'm picking to do this travel now.
Miss Jackson?
I'm sorry, Shanita. Hold on 1 second. Yes.
Miss Jackson, we have all guests on deck.
Okay,
and
who do we have?
We have 1 minute left to air. We have Attorney Hoffler, Miss Wells, and Dwight McKee.
Oh, okay, we'll take care of Miss Wells quickly.
Got about 45 seconds left to air.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to get that. All right. Hi, Dwight. Hi, CK. How you doing?
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We have about 10 seconds, so
Thank
stand
you.
by.
Change the world. We can change the world.
We're live.
Change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome
This
back
is
to
the
the Santita Jackson Show. Okay, well, I'm speaking over my own intro.
No, you're not.
Okay.
I didn't put you on yet.
Thanks. Everybody, Santita Jackson. Let's talk about Georgia. Everyone is focused on Georgia and what's happening there. We've got our own elections here. We're set to elect a few new congressmen, and really every congressional seat, every seat in the House of Representatives is up for re-election. A third of the Senate is up for re-election. Governorships are up, and on and on and on and on it goes. I want to know if you're still registered to vote. Go to vote.org, vote.org, and let me know if you need to find out if you are still registered. And then if you decide to vote early, please, if you have some problems in the polling place or outside of the polling place, do not leave the polling place. Call 1-866-OUR-VOTE, 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Lawyers are there. Lawyers are at this clearinghouse, and they will answer your questions and they will instruct you as to what you should do. Once you leave, if you leave before you have completed the voting process, it's very, very hard to rectify. So please, everybody, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE if you have any problems in or around the polling site. 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Before we get into it, Chaparral, celebrations by us. It's feeling like spring, but we are moving into winter. I don't know what the weather's going to be like, though.
Yes, Santita. This weather is changing, and we're going into our fall, and we are preparing for Thanksgiving already. So please get your orders in for your holiday meals. 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We can handle your complete holiday meal as well as also your desserts. We are still doing setups and decor, as well as also baby showers, birthday parties, weddings, whatever you need for your holiday or party needs. We are here to take care of you. And please don't hesitate to give us a call, 708-526-4546, 708-526-4546. We look forward to serving you. Thank you so much, Santita.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, everybody. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. What are the issues driving people to the polls? Who do you think is going to win? Who will win this messaging battle? Because it really is about messaging as much as it is anything else. In the summertime, after the Dobbs decision was rendered, after Roe v. Wade was overturned, Democrats felt very comfortable, particularly in light of what happened in Kansas, that this would be the issue driving people to the polls. Other people said, not so fast. You know, my father's often said that in politics, an hour is a light year. everything can change in the blinking of an eye. And it has changed because now crime and the economy, inflation, those are the issues that are really, really that are consuming the American voter on the Democratic and Republican sides. And the fact is, Bernie Sanders has said Democrats don't cede ground to the Republicans just because the president's polling numbers are not great, but they are great. They're better than they were. I mean, he has had significant accomplishments legislatively. And in terms of policy, even as they're being challenged in the courts, he has had some big wins. And the economic relief that he has tried to render to Americans, the obstructionists have been the Republicans. He should say that. Democrats should say that. This is what we put forth. This is the kind of relief it could have given you. This is what you would have been feeling right now. And these are the people who stood in the way of you and relief. These are the people who are keeping food off of your table and money out your pocket. So let's talk about this, everybody, as we look at early voting setting records. According to this New York Times report, through the first 5 days of early voting in Georgia, in-person voting is up, everybody, 70% compared with turnout in the 2018 midterm elections, according to the Secretary of State. In North Carolina, absentee ballot requests are up 114%. In Florida, the total early vote is up 50%. People are engaged. They are excited. And let's go to Attorney C.K. Hoffler, chair of Rainbow Push, of course, legal analyst on Court TV, host of our own show later on today on WAOK at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time. Brilliant social scientist Dwight McKee is with us as well, because this is really what's happening in Georgia. These are this is a national election, and we feel that way as we're watching Mandela Barnes and Ron Johnson. They're within the margin of error. They literally are a point apart, according to the polls. It's going to be a long night, everybody. It's going to be an exciting night. And I tell you what, you can push back this right-wing tide if you get out and vote. CK, what's happening in Georgia? What do you see?
Well, in Georgia, good morning, Santita and Dwight and everyone. In Georgia, what we see is an incredibly tight race for the U.S. Senate. Regrettably, Herschel Walker is giving Senator Raphael Warnock a run for his money. I say regrettably because, and we don't need to devote today's show to how many ways can we count how he would be a disaster for the state of Georgia if he were to win. But it's the machinery behind Herschel Walker that supports him by any means necessary they intend to win. What a lot of people don't realize in Georgia is there's a third candidate, a libertarian, and under Georgia law, Georgia rules, you have to have a greater than 50% vote for there not to be a runoff. So theoretically, because there's a third person voting, there could be a situation where there's a runoff election in Georgia between Senator Warnock and Herschel Walker. So, especially with the race being this close. And so it's what would a runoff election mean? It would mean that we'd have to go through this all over again, quite frankly. And ultimately, I do believe that Senator Warnock will pull it out, will win, because on social media, which is how a lot of people get their news these days, and of course on television where they see the ads, there's more disturbing information that comes out by the day. The campaign, the negative campaign ads on both sides are intensifying, but the type of ads for Walker are perhaps very disturbing. Where you've got a series of women, black, white, and mostly white women, that are coming out and looking very, very disturbed and feel unsafe. And if Herschel Walker were to win, that's really enough to impact the vote that people believe white women are winning. That probably be in favor.
Okay, you're going in and out, CK. I don't know what's happening.
Okay, I'm not sure why, but anyway, that is designed to impact the vote, in some respects, the vote of white women. that people believe would be solidly cast, the votes would be cast in favor of Herschel Walker.
Mm-hmm.
So the type of campaigning that we're seeing is very distressing in some respects, distressing insofar as that it's even necessary to have this kind of campaigning to be able to defeat Herschel Walker, who is such a train wreck and would be a disaster for the state of Georgia. So, but this is where we are. And on the side of the gubernatorial race, Stacey Abrams is, not in the lead, but she's within striking distance and could very well win. It's going to turn on getting out the vote. Now, the good news for both candidates is I think Senator Warnock will win if we turn out the vote and Democrats come out the vote. And Stacey Abrams certainly would be within striking distance and could win and should win, in my impression. And with the vote, we're seeing record numbers of turnout for vote, especially for midterm elections, record numbers. And people are determined to speak and be heard by casting their vote. And I believe that is the recipe for both Senator Warnock and Stacey Abrams to win.
Dwight McKee, what do you see? I mean, it seems like this race is up close on us. These races really mean a whole lot to us. And you see, voting is up 70%. I mean, I think they had 400,000 people who turned out from the midterms in 2018. More than 800,000 have already turned out in early voting. Dwight McKee?
Well, it's such a difficult read because you have so many dynamics going on. You have the phenomenon of white women who it's hard to figure out where they are in the scheme of things. Is the whole liberal, we all come together. We seem to have more in common than we do apart. Seems to not work for these elections. Is that for some reason white women have an affinity for Herschel Walker that we don't on him if it's based on the Republican Party or it's based on their need to, to be in charge and control and to maintain the power status there. It's black men and where they fit. It's not a given that they are locked into Warnock for reasons that we have not figured out, and their affinity for Trump that we haven't quite figured out where they fit. It seems like that many of them will be going in more into a kind of a new direction when it comes to this particular campaign. That Trump is and Herschel has picked up some of their votes. And then there's the phenomenon of Hispanic men and Hispanics in this election. Many of them seem to have gone to the right, which is very surprising when you look at some of the issues that they say are major issues that need to be dealt with, like immigration. The contradiction of, if immigration is such an important issue to you, then why are you so pro-Trump? Or why are you so anti-Warnock? It's a very hard read because there's no continuity, it seems like, in the different constituencies.
And I think the undecided voters, that's a big deal, CK. And then when we look at white women in 2018, 76% of them voted for Brian Kemp over Stacey Abrams. And it's something that people, most of us don't know that. I brought up those numbers yesterday. And it's something that our white sisters are loath to talk about. because we're making the assumption that women are coming together, to elect this woman governor. And no, it's not that at all. Do you think any of those, have you seen a shift in white female support for Stacey Abrams in this election, in this electoral cycle? Is there any discussion about that?
Yes, there is some discussion about that. And to the extent that there's been a shift, I don't know about a shift, that might be too strong a word, but the dialogue has been surrounding women's reproductive rights, where some women, but it's not on the level of what we saw, for instance, in Kansas, where white women united and said, absolutely not. We are not going to be in favor or proponents of a law that makes it illegal for us to get abortions. And their vote was decisive in Kansas and made the difference. So we're not seeing that kind of shift on those numbers, at least reported. But we are seeing some shift. And how much is uncertain right now, but there is some shift. And that's what's being reported relative to women's reproductive rights and the overturning of Roe versus Wade, because Brian Kemp and Herschel Walker have taken a very, very draconian approach to a woman's ability to decide what happens to her body. Very draconian. Even Herschel Walker said, even in case of incest and rape.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think where you have a lot of women, and white women in particular, being able to absorb, because, the whole issue of the overturning of Roe versus Wade does not impact the classification of women that it impacts are low-income women, women of color, Black women, Latino women. But it doesn't really impact any women of means, whether they're white, whether they're Black, whether they're Latino, whether they're any demographic, if they have means, because they will simply take a plane and fly to Illinois or fly someplace and have an abortion, or they will take their daughters or their nieces. So that whole discussion and narrative does not impact women of means, but it does impact significantly women who have no means. And that's where you could see the shift. But also there are women of means who we are seeing that also do have, who are reflecting. And that's what we're seeing in the press, and that's where there's been some discussion. But Santita, is it major? Is it significant? That I can't say. It's too early to say.
We have to see.
The record turnout, we have to see. But the record turnout, there have been record numbers of Black voters turning out in the midterm elections, and that's what's important. That's what's significant as well.
What's driving it? I mean, what's got people? I mean, these numbers are moving toward doubling from what we saw in 2018.
Yes. And I think what's driving it is people feeling that they're being manipulated and feeling that there's voter suppression, because we have to remember that Georgia has a very, very oppressive voter suppression law. I feel like I'm saying, I'm using words that make it's redundant. I mean, suppressive, oppressive, but that's what the law is. And I think that as a result of those very, very oppressive laws, people are feeling angry about that and feeling that they're being taken for granted. And that is driving, I believe, the narrative amongst some voters and why people are turning out. And they want to turn out early voting. The fact that people can challenge your vote, all of those things are making people angry. And the fact that people's votes have been challenged, their ability to vote have already been challenged.
Dwight McKee, you brought up something that many of us we've been talking about it on this show, this affinity. And in some cases, it's unstated, but more and more people are being quite open and honest about their embrace of the president, of former President Trump. More and more people are they are unabashed in their support. And what do you think is Herschel Walker's, some of his appeal to people? Because, there is a group, there is a subset of Black folks who like him. There is a whole gaggle of white folks who do, because he speaks to a certain narrative about Black men. And just there are a whole host of reasons. It's hard for us to fathom, CK, that he could be embraced. But he is being embraced. I mean, and really being embraced as he has the whole of his public life. Dwight McKee.
Well, you know, he's a legitimate sports hero in Georgia, which is a sports state. State where sports is almost a religion. He's a legitimate Heisman Trophy winner and was one of the great ball players of all time. And there's a certain charisma to that. I mean, he's macho. He's pretty candid. He's very successful financially. And he has a historic relationship with Trump that goes back 20, 30, 40 years. But when Trump owned the football team and traded for him. And so, you know, he brings a certain cachet that Walron, who's an intellectual, really does not bring. So I don't think you can disregard what he brings to the table. And I think that in a situation where the margins are so close, you can't take for granted that he can't, you know, can't become the senator, believe it or not.
CK? I mean, because you're down there, you have two sons, one son who's a Division I football player in the South, and you have another son who's going to be a Division I football player in the South next year. Well, perhaps in the South. But, I mean, you kept saying that this is a religion. You're like, hey, you got to understand football is religion. I mean, and I see how my father obsesses over football today. I mean, wow. It's hard to believe that would carry that much weight, but apparently it does.
Regrettably. And because I'm in the religion of football, and I don't believe it's almost religion. I believe it is religion. Certainly in the South, and my other son is going to be at Clemson, so he's going to be in the South too. And I have to tell you, that is part of Herschel Walker's appeal. That's part of Herschel Walker's appeal. People are envisioning him running down the football field and creating the magic. Now, I don't take that away from him. There are many things that I think Herschel Walker could do, perhaps should do. I just take a very strong position. He should not be the next senator from the state of Georgia, but he could win. Let's be very clear. And Senator Warnock and many progressives and those of us who believe that Herschel Walker is not fit to be a U.S. senator of any state. And if he were a Democrat, I would say that. Let's be really clear. If he were the Democratic nominee, if he were the candidate from the Democratic Party, I would say he is absolutely positively not fit. So I want to be really clear about that. He's just not fit. He should not be our senator. Having said that, he could be our senator.
Yeah, I mean, so given with those givens in a minute, why do you think that the race is so tight?
It's so tight because there's a machinery behind Herschel Walker that is exceptionally well funded. The entire Trump machinery is behind Herschel Walker to help him win, in addition to the fact that he's part of a religion. That's football. Mm-hmm. When you combine those two, no matter how crazy he acts and seems and has been and all the things he's done, people are still fascinated. They're like, yeah, maybe that magic that he created on the field, he will create in the U.S. Senate, because there's a sense of dissatisfaction with what's happening in the country today. Mm-hmm. So they want some magic. People want to be able to dream and have some magic. And he might have some crazy mixture of magic, in my impression. But there's some people that go towards that magic, whatever it is.
It's something to be said. I've got less than a minute, Dwight. Your thoughts before we go.
I mean, it's the thing that we've been talking about is that it's a religion, and in a religion, he's a high priest in that religion. And so, I mean, when you talk about that he's not qualified to be the senator, well, Trump was not qualified to be the president. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about whether or not people are qualified. We're talking about whether or not that they can convince other people that they are qualified. And therein lies the dilemma, is that if you can convince these other people that you're qualified, then you become qualified, by definition. It's a real conundrum that we find ourselves in.
Perhaps qualifications...
And the stakes are so high.
And perhaps qualifications have never really been the point, because I think we're making the wrong argument here. The fact is, some people like him. And other people, and they want to see him there. Some folks like Clarence Thomas, and they want to see him in the Supreme Court. I mean, that's just real. These folks, and when they like you like that, their qualifications, they don't care about that. They do not care. And it's going to be a horse race to the finish, everybody. That's why I need you to go to vote.org, find out if you've heard from the voter rolls. Make sure that you know where you can go vote. You can find all of that out. And if you are voting early, if you have any trouble outside the polls or inside the polls, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE and get your instructions from there. Do you want a job? I mean, really, really, really. We've had the great resignation. And it seems that many of us don't know where to go. Tech is really where it's at for so many of us, because we're all techies now. We're going to talk to one of the top men in the field, and he's African American, and he's from Chicago. Hey, Wheeler Coleman coming up on the Santita Jackson Show, and then John Nichols talking about these big races on the Santita Jackson Show. Stay tuned for more of the Santita Jackson Show. CK?
Yes, Santita.
Girl, I know. Look, I'm not trying to vex your spirit. I'm just saying, child, please.
I know. No, it's very distressing, because the more information that comes out, the more uneasy many people become. Even some people who probably vote for him, they're like, well, they're going to hold their nose, and they're looking at it's more. I think there's just a certain appeal to some people, but Senator Warnock can still win.
Oh no! I think he can win. I just want us to, ask. Let's add some questions to the questions list, and add some issues, because his qualifications, that matters to some of us. It doesn't matter to all of us. The fact is, he's technically qualified. He's of a certain age, and he's a citizen and a resident, and that's it.
Right, and that's right, and that may be all that it takes. And when I say qualified, I don't look at if it's how I define qualified.
Oh, of course, I'm with you.
It's not the intellectual. It's not the intellectual, academic, and all that. That's not really because anyone can run for U.S. Senate and be qualified. And as Dwight McKee said, many would argue President Trump was not qualified. Mm-mm. So when I define qualifications, I look at it from a much broader perspective.
I agree. Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
His temperament, the issues, his ability to do the things that I think a U.S. Senator do. But he's qualified in one respect.
No, I hear you.
He knows how to operate as a puppet.
Miss Jackson?
Yes. Oh, hold on.
We
CK?
have Mr. Coleman on.
I'm going to have to let you go, because I've got to move on to this next segment. But we're going to continue, honey. We're going to continue to talk about this, because the race is tighter than this. One word. And it's amazing to me. Although I think it's opened up by 6 points, but it's the undecideds who have me a little concerned. No, a lot concerned.
Right. We should take nothing for granted to the end.
Oh my gosh.
If they're voting, it could change. So, and there could be a runoff. I don't think I've not heard any commentary, anybody commenting on that, because if you've got a libertarian running, that person may get 5% of the vote, 2%, 1%, may get the vote, the amount that would not allow either one of the candidates to get over 50%. And then there's a runoff.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
Yep.
Well,
all right. Y'all have a great day.
Have a great show on WAOK, everybody, at 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 10 o'clock Central Standard Time, WAOK. Check out C.K. Hoffler's show tomorrow. Dwight McKee, thank you so much for being with us today.
All righty.
Blessings. Get some rest.
Okay. Bye.
Mr. Coleman, how are you?
I'm great, Santina. How are you?
Oh, it's great to hear your voice. Great to hear your voice. And you know, it's Santita.
Santita.
But you know what? Albertina Walker, of course, you know her, the queen of gospel music. She said, I don't care what your name is. I'm Albertina. You gonna be Santina. Oh my gosh. And I loved her so much. I said, and I was a grown woman when she said that. She said, girl, I know what your name is, and I don't care. You my little Tina. I will take that to the grave with me. She said, you my little Tina.
Oh my goodness.
You'll be Santina and I'm Albertina. You hear me? Yes, ma'am. Thank you. But welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're with us today.
Thank you for having me on this morning. It's an honor to be able to spend some time with you this morning.
Well, I can't wait for you to come back because there's so much that's going on in your field, you know, as people are trying to make it more diverse, as people are trying to get into the field, as many people are beginning to find, like you, that they actually have talent in the space. I mean, ooh, I did not want to take a computer class when I was in high school. Ooh. And my father said, but you need to, honey. That's the wave of the future. I said, but my eyes cross. This is boring me, Daddy. He said, baby, you're going to have to learn how to work those computers because that's where the world is. This was 40 years ago. He sure did tell me that. And here we are. Your phone's a computer.
Here we are.
Oh. But of course, we're going to start with your personal history, and then we'll get right into it because there's so many pieces that we can move. But you know, I told you there, you know, 3 major points that you want to make, and I just want you to make them.
We have 1 minute.
Well, Santita,
1 minute.
I like to say the world of computers are pervasive.
Mm-hmm.
They're everywhere, right? And you mentioned it earlier. Everybody walks around that has a phone in their hand. We just happen to call it a phone, but it's really a computer.
Mm.
Ironically, the folks at Kodak created the first digital camera.
Mm.
And, you know, our phone is also a camera. So we call it a phone. It's a camera. It's a computer. We use it to surf the internet. We use it to acquire things, to make purchases. We use it to interact with others via SMS, text messaging, or even emails. And so we have this computer that we walk around with that is more powerful than the computers that put people on the moon over 40 plus years ago. So when we talk about technology, every single day technology is changing.
30 seconds.
So let me talk to you about how I got into the field because
Absolutely.
I think it's important that,
well, you know,
your listeners.
I want people to know that it was you didn't just waltz in.
Stand by.
That you
Stand by.
I'll bring you up.
Yeah, and so.
Oh no, hold on, we're coming up.
Stand by. We're about to go live.
Okay.
Thank you.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on Facebook, and more than that, go on over to YouTube, the Santita Jackson Show, and join the conversation. Do you want a job? We've had the Great Resignation, and a lot of us are far more technologically skilled than we know. We could have jobs in tech, in IT, in cybersecurity, Please, our phones, they're computers. Our televisions are computers, for heaven's sake. Everybody's engaged in that world, whether we know it or not, whether we want to be engaged in it or not. And you don't know just how talented you are. This gentleman is one of the most influential and powerful men in the whole space, And when he took his first class, well, let me not get ahead of myself. I can't wait for you to meet Wheeler Coleman, our own from here in Chicago. His story is so compelling, it will help you, it will inspire you. So let's get right to it, everybody. And then, of course, John Nichols at the bottom of the hour talking about politics, the midterms, 2 weeks from today. Go to vote.org and find out if you're still registered, find out where you can go vote. And if you are early voting, call 1-866-OUR-VOTE if you have any problems inside or outside of the polling place. Do not leave the polling place until you have worked out whatever issues you have with 1-866-OUR-VOTE. They will tell you how to get through the process, through the voting process. And Chicago will have a high of 63 degrees. It'll be rainy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 51 degrees, partly cloudy. In the NFL, the Chicago Bears rocked it out last night, 33-14 over the Patriots. In the NBA, the Spurs 115, the Timberwolves 106, and the Bulls 120. The Celtics 102. There's a new British Prime Minister, the first person of color, the first Southeast Asian. He's a young man. He's also one of the wealthiest men in Britain, worth more than $850 million. Rishi Sunak, everybody. He was just brought in today, had his meeting with, King Charles, and he is setting up a government as we speak. The Biden administration is arguing it should be allowed to carry out its student loan debt relief plan while litigation of the policy plays out. In a new brief filed with the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which is considering a legal challenge to the program brought by 6 Republican-led states, the administration defended the policy and argued that there are serious flaws with the challengers' case, everybody. St. Louis shooting, a 16-year-old girl, a 61-year-old woman, both beloved by their community, were killed yesterday in a shooting at a high school in St. Louis. Officers arrived at the school 4 minutes after the first 9/11 call, and it took them 8 minutes to find the gunman. God bless those souls. We've been talking about financial freedom on this show, and Team Hochberg, I think you need to reach out to them. If you need to establish credit, if you have poor credit, if you've had bankruptcy, if you've got massive credit card debt, if you are using that debit card, you need to be using a credit card, but you say, I don't have enough credit, or my credit's so poor. Well, guess what? Just stop. Call Team Hochberg at 1-855-856-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit them at 56david.com and get a free assessment of where you are. Get a free assessment of where you are. And then they will come up with a plan. They will negotiate with your credit card company. They will give you a plan, develop a plan for you to get enough money together so that you can get your credit score up, so that you can buy a house, buy a home, buy an apartment building. 1-855-56-DAVID. If you're purchasing a new home, if you want to find out about reverse loans, if you need to bring down car debt, if you need to secure a VA loan, all of that, if you've been turned down, go to 1-855-56-DAVID. Team Hochberg, everybody. Tom and Sonia, 2 kids, struggle to pay their 6% mortgage and minimum payments of $100,000 on their 17 credit cards. Well, they called Team Hochberg. Team Hochberg negotiated with their credit card companies, brought those payments down by $2,800 a month, and helped them to save their home. That can be you, everybody. So many people are drowning in debt, like Tom and Sonia. But Team Hochberg can stop the bleeding, Indeed, they can help to get you on the road to financial freedom. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit them at 56david.com and come on up out of debt and come into the light, everybody. I was so impressed with this gentleman when I first heard his story. His narrative is so compelling. It's so compelling. He's the CEO and founder of Executive Consultants United. It's a nationally certified MBE consulting firm. He is a Black man. He's from the west side of Chicago. He's from Inglewood. He's walked our walk. He's talked our talk. but he scaled the heights, and yet he is reaching back. He's trying. He's a philanthropist. He's an extremely successful businessman, and he's one of the leaders, one of the leading figures in the IT world, in cybersecurity. And I'm so honored to have Wheeler Coleman with us today, one of the top turnaround specialists in corporate America. His story is so compelling, and yet his story started out like so many of ours. You were not always someone who knew exactly where was going. You're not someone who was always, say, fast-tracked, at least at the beginning, until they tested you and put you in one of the top high schools, because you are organically a brilliant guy. But even then you struggled. Wheeler Coleman, welcome to the show.
Santita, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. And so, no, I wasn't always on top of my game. In fact, when I was young, I got a scholarship and I don't know how I got the scholarship, but I got a scholarship to go to Cathedral High School for the 4 years. And so I'm grateful for the people that got behind the program and saw, a little beacon of light in me and decided to invest in me and give me a scholarship. When I was at that school, a nun in my senior year said, "Wheeler, what are you going to do after you graduate?" And I said, "I have no clue, but I think I'm going to go to college, but I have no clue what I'm going to study. All I know is that I need to get a job when I graduate from college." Now, see, keep in mind, I grew up in the Abla Project homes on the west side of Chicago, 14th and Ashland. And then when I got to high school, my mom moved us to Inglewood to be in a safer neighborhood. And so one thing I knew for certain is that I couldn't afford to go to college for 4 years and then not be able to find a job in my major. So I had to find a way to study something that will allow me to make an income and to feed myself and potentially take me out of poverty. And so the nun looked me in the eye and said, "Well, Wheeler, they said computers are the future, so maybe you should study computers. There should be a lot of jobs available for you." And ironically, she was right. So I went to Northern Illinois University. I majored in computer science. I took my first computer class ever. Didn't have any in high school. So I took my first computer class, Introduction to Data Processing. And you wouldn't believe it. I failed it. And I had to take that class over again. It was a lesson learned because, one, I knew I had to really study and learn how to study. And then I also, so I took the class over again, and I ended up getting an A out of that class. I aced the class. From there, it was history. I fell in love with computers. I fell in love with writing software, having the ability to make a $10 million computer hum was awesome in my eyes. And so I went all in, and I went on to have a career in corporate America. I spent over 33 years working in corporate America, worked my way up from writing software to becoming a chief technology officer and then a 2-time CIO. And so I want to share my story with others because it's really important that people understand that, that computers are a mystery for some, but if I can do it, others can do it. And I'd like to encourage any and every student that may be out there or any parent who are guiding and teaching our kids to look at computers as a way or as a potential career decision.
What made you take that class again? Because most people fail a class and say, "That's it. I have no aptitude for this." And we don't even say that much. You go, "Look, I'm out. I'm done." It didn't work for me. What made you go back?
Yeah, I mean, so there, if you look at all the great and all the successful people in this world, they all encounter failure at some point in time in their life. And so you have to make a decision, do you really want it? And if you want it, you got to pick yourself up and dust yourself off, and you got to retool yourself, and then you got to go at it. And so that's the attitude I had, was that, okay, clearly my first introduction to the field was not the best. But if it's something that I really wanted, that I had to find a way to adjust. Now, I will tell you, I also realized that I wasn't applying myself properly. You can't just fall into greatness. You have to work for greatness. And to get an A, right, there's no shortcuts, right? So that means you have to apply yourself. And I wasn't applying myself properly when I first got introduced to the field, and I realized that, and then I had to change my way.
Did you get a tutor?
I'm glad I did.
Did you say I need a tutor, or what happened?
No, I realized that, I have this philosophy. So I did, ironically, when I was in the Avila Project Homes, there was a building next to ours called 1440. And 1440 is also the number of minutes in a day, actually. Right. And so I realized I had to use my 1440 differently. I got to use the number of minutes that's available to me during the course of the day differently. And it means that if I'm not succeeding at anything, I got to spend more time with it. I got to use my 1440 better, right? So it meant that I had to spend more time with all the difficult courses that I had. And actually, the most difficult one I had was the introduction to data processing at the time.
We're talking with Wheeler Coleman, one of the leaders in the field of technology. Indeed, he's African American, one of the top turnaround specialists in all of corporate America, and he's got one of the world's leading companies on cybersecurity. He's the chief executive officer and founder of Executive Consultants United. You need to be in touch with him, and he wants to be in touch with you. He wants to be in touch with you and your children as we're in the midst of this great resignation, so that you might have a rethink about what you want to do. You might have talent that you've not tapped into. I mean, talk to me about the opportunities in this field, because many of us are really much more technologically involved, at least, if not savvy, than we know. Because as you pointed out before we came on the air, your phone is not just a phone, it's a camera. My phone is a computer. I write on it. I've got hundreds of books on it, thousands of songs, thousands of documents that I've written that are like 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 words. I mean, it's a computer. And if I am without it, Wheeler Coleman, I am lost.
Most people are, right? So we come to depend on our computer that we call the phone. I often tell folks, man, can you imagine the folks at Kodak actually discovered the first digital camera, and they were making so much money in film, they decided to put it on the shelf. And other scientists got their hands on it, and we now call a digital phone our camera, or we call our digital camera our phone, right? Give me my phone, I need to take a picture, right? And so really you got this powerful computer that's at your hand that everybody's carrying, even people in third world countries are carrying smartphones. So let me talk about some of the opportunities that are available in the technology field. And anytime I get an opportunity to talk about it, I try to encourage people to consider a career. First of all, there's hundreds of types of jobs that are in the technology field that you could specialize in. So there's a ton of specialties that are available. Today in the U.S. alone, there's over 11 million open jobs that are going unfulfilled today
11 million?
in the U.S. 11 million. Now, none of those are technology jobs, but a good portion of them are. Of the top 10 most popular jobs, or the most demand jobs that are out there in the industry today, half of them are in IT. Half of them. And we're not talking about $18 an hour jobs. We're typically talking about jobs that can lead into a lifelong career that are paying anywhere from $25 to $30 an hour.
Wow.
And so we got all of these jobs that are going unfulfilled. And then you put on top of it the great resignation that came out of the COVID. You also put in place the fact that our former president made it difficult for foreigners to come to the U.S. to take on some of those jobs or to fill some of those jobs. So now you got all these highly paid, highly skilled technical jobs that are going unfulfilled. And so we as a people need to step back and say, wait a second. This is our way of moving out of poverty. This is also a way to help us build generational wealth. And so I try to encourage any and everybody to consider technology as a possible job solution or as a future, as a career. Now, another thing, if you have a degree and you want to retool yourself, the best way to retool yourself is to go get a certification in technology. So I've encouraged people to go to DePaul or to go to one of our local universities and get a specialty certification in technology. So those degrees are recognized because a lot of jobs will sit back and say you have to have a degree or equivalent, job equivalent. So if you have a degree and you want to retool yourself, don't go get another 4-year degree no. Go get a certification, whether it's in cybersecurity, whether it's in engineering, network engineering, or some of the software specialty spaces. I would encourage you to get a certification. And then from there, make that transition to the technology field. For those that don't have a degree in considering technology as a field, you can also get certifications, but you may have to take a more entry-level role with just a certification. But on top of that, if you're young and in school, I'd like to encourage you to continue to sharpen your skills or learn as much as you can about the technology field, and then use it as a way to elevate yourself, your people, and to build a career for yourself.
You know, many people wouldn't think about getting a certification. We think that, okay, I would need to go to school to get another degree. But a certification is, what is that exactly? That's a very specialized program that you would enter into, Mr. Coleman?
Yes, it would be. And so think about this for a second. So if you have interest in cybersecurity, you can take a 6-month certification class or series of classes, right, and get certified in the field of cybersecurity. Now, in some cases, it may be a particular tool, software, certification, or an engineering certification, but it's a way to specialize in a given area. There was this young kid who, a friend of the family, he wanted to move into the computer science field. He wanted to write software. And his dad was really upset with him because he just got his degree. I think he got his degree in accounting. His dad was pretty upset with him that he wanted to make this transition to go into computers. And so he was encouraging, he was trying to talk his dad into helping him go back to school so he can get a degree in computer science. And I said, no. You already have a degree under your belt. You can make this transition and become a top-notch software developer. Just go to school and get your certification. It's quicker, and organizations that have great needs will honor that certification and bring you in, get you an entry-level role. And he did exactly that. He's a big hot. He's an awesome software developer that's writing applications for the phones, apps, for a large software development company here in Chicago, right? And so he was able to make that transition and is making way more money than he was making in the field of accounting.
Will you come back to the show?
Absolutely.
Oh, because, Jewel wants to know if you have a mentor, if you can be a mentor. Laura said she wants to be more involved in computer technology than anyone else, but they don't know how.
Yeah, I'd love to come back, and at some point, I also like to talk to your business owners, especially your small and medium sized business owners, about industry best practices on to protect their investment, their companies. I also would like to talk to your listening audience at some point about how to protect their own personal assets and not to get hit with any breaches or ransomware and that kind of stuff. And so if you have me back, Santina, I would love to be. I'd love to come back and talk to your listening audience.
Well, I'm gonna tickle this out now. You're gonna talk about tech debt when you come back too. Tech debt.
Well, and so technology debt is a term that is used to.
Well, no, hold on. I'm going to hold you to the other side of the break.
Yeah.
I just want you to give that. I know we're going into politics today, but we're talking to Wheeler Coleman, and I know you all want to talk with him because everybody has been involved in this great resignation. But we're much more tech savvy than we know, or at least we ought to be. But technology is now a part of our lives, and we need to know how we need to protect ourselves, and we need to direct our children and ourselves in the right space. You might not need another degree, or you might need to get certified. And you need to know that even if you didn't do well in that class, I don't care what class you're taking, take it again. You might get it this time. Wheeler Coleman, everybody, CEO and founder of Executive Consultants United. Can't wait to get some closing thoughts from him on the other side before we talk with John Nichols about midterms 2022. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. I'm sorry I had to keep you over, but I've got so many people asking me so many questions right now. I said, I can't let you go. I can't. Yes, and Miss Robinson said, please come back.
Absolutely.
Oh, everybody. Jewel said, please return. I told you. Extremely important.
There's a lot of needs there.
Oh, there are a lot of needs. There's a lot of interest. Joyce said, I'm so very interested. I've got time on my hands. I mean, there's a lot going on. And so what I will do is I'll call your office today, my dear friend Angelica, and we are going to get you back on next week.
Let's do it.
I don't want any grass to grow, or if it's someone, because I know that you're very busy, if there's someone that you'd like to push in our direction, that's perfectly fine. But I know your story's so compelling. It's really, looking at the comments, has been very inspiring to people.
Great. Well, so I'd love to come back. Next week, I'm in New Orleans. Our company is being recognized as one of the Fast 50 by the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council. And so we're the only company in the city of Chicago being recognized. We're the second or one of two companies in the state of Illinois. And so it's an honor. But 7:00 in the morning is your time, man. So you let me know when, and we'll make it happen.
Oh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it because people want to know. This is Jewel. What did you say? You always give us the most informative guest. I love you, girl. Thank you, Jewel. But I try, and I have to thank Angelica Amador for bringing you into my space. And I just knew that when I spoke with you, that I said, my audience, they're going to love you. And they do.
Yeah, there's so much that we could talk about, right? And so I look forward to teeing up some of those other issues. Take a deeper dive into cybersecurity, talk about technology debt, talk about people, process, and technology. But keep in mind, we got our share of small businesses that are out there. but many of them are struggling with technology, and they don't have to. And so we need to find a way to give them advice on how to use technology, how to get the appropriate support, how to embrace the industry best practices so they don't make mistakes that will stumble their businesses. You would be surprised, my sister. You would be surprised the number of African American companies that have gotten hit by ransomware, where their computers have gotten locked up and they've lost total access to all of their data, all of their files. Right? You would be absolutely surprised how that has in some cases it has destroyed some of our African American businesses. In other cases, these businesses had to step back 6 months without having access to their files. So you think losing your billing system, losing your invoicing system, right? Losing your critical files, your project files, your contacts, right? Your payroll system. You literally have to rebuild your operation. And so we need to talk about that more in our community so these individuals can adopt some best practices and hopefully minimize major impact or disruption to their operation.
We'll stand by because I'm going to have you back, and everybody wants you back.
Stand by. We have about 10 seconds till we go live. Stand by.
I'm going to let you give some closing thoughts, and you can tell people about, just as you come back, what you want to talk about. But people want to know also if you have internships.
Stand by.
Okay,
Here we
I got
go.
you, hon.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Of course, coming up, John Nichols, as we talk about midterms 2022. I've got to find out what's happening in Wisconsin. That senatorial race has closed up. It is so tight. But so many of you want to keep Wheeler Coleman on. He's got to run this morning, but he's going to be coming back. The CEO and founder of Executive Consultants United, EC United, nationally certified MBE. He's on his way to New Orleans next week to be honored. He's a philanthropist. He comes from the west side of Chicago. He comes from Inglewood. When he took his first computer class, it didn't work out so well, but he went back. It was no magic and moon dust, everybody. He just worked at it. He said, look, everybody's got 1,440 minutes in their day. And what are you going to do with yours? You sound like my brother Jonathan. That's exactly what he says. How are you going to apportion your time? And my father would say, don't complain about what you don't have. He said, some people accomplish a lot with 24 hours. And what are you going to do? I love it, love it, love it, love it. And he said, no, I did not have a tutor. I just sat down and applied myself. And sometimes that's all it takes. Sometimes we need more time. But we're so excited that he's with us, but he's going to be coming to us, giving us more and more information so that you can look at this field. Before you give us some of your closing thoughts, please tell me, do you have internships, or is there any way that people can get in touch with you and your company?
Well, yeah. So you can reach out to us via our web at ec-united.com, or you can send an email to me at info@ec-united.com, or you can call me at 773-633-0892. We have job opportunities. So part of our world is we put people to work that are specialists in the field. And some of our roles and responsibilities are entry level. Some are extremely advanced. I mean, we do business with Fortune 100 companies as well as the local community center. And so our objective is to help transform operations and help mature capabilities. And so, Santita, when you invite me back, I love to talk about how individuals need to protect their via their computers. Make sure they don't get hit with ransomware or they don't get breached in any form or fashion. One thing is for certain: African American businesses are getting hit with ransomware just like Caucasian businesses. And the small businessmen are being adversely impacted. It takes, in some cases, if you get hit with ransomware, it may take you 6 months or more to recover. Just imagine losing access to all your files, all of your systems, your payroll, and all of that impact. And African American companies have been hit in this area, and so we need to talk about how do we adopt best practices in our operations and in our household to make sure that we don't get hit with ransomware or our files get corrupted or our personal information get taken and sold on the dark web. And so I'd love to come back and talk about that. I also wanted for some of the businesses, our churches, and some of our non-for-profit organizations, I'd love to talk about a term that is called technology debt. And this is where we defer maintenance on our computers and our software that makes us vulnerable for other activities. And so when you have me back, I'd love to talk about that. And then if we need to talk more about careers in technology, I'd love to do that as well. That's my favorite topic.
Oh, well, look, we've got everything cut out for you. What is your number again?
773-633-0892.
Blessings to you, and info@ecunited.com. Wheeler Coleman, what a gift you are. And thank you you've taught us a lot today. You know,
Thank you for that.
No, thank you. I mean, because, there's a lesson in everything. And we oftentimes count ourselves out. I didn't do well in this class, or I didn't get the A. I didn't ace it the first time. So maybe you need to come back again and again and again. We have too much social promotion in the world. Sometimes you just need to stick with it. And then the second, third, or 50th time you'll get it, and that's where your genius is. You just don't know. And we've seen that's where your genius is. And even though he's an alum of NIU, that's all right. I'm a Howardite, but, we still love you. Okay, he used to be head of the board of trustees, so he's gonna come here, pushing for NIU, but that's all right. I can be one of the most.
It changed my world. Right?
That's right. At Cathedral Catholic School, it wasn't a public school. It wasn't Whitney Young, but that's all right. I'm just gonna leave that alone. But thank you so much for honoring us today, and can't wait to have you on. I'm going to work it out so that you'll be back on next week. Because with this great resignation, everybody's asking questions about how they can re-enter the workforce, do something different, how they can direct their children. A lot of people have even more questions for you. So we're going to have more time next week.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Blessings to you. Thank you for honoring us today. Everybody go to info@ECUnited. Info@ECUnited. Get in touch with Wheeler Coleman there. If you want to change your career, if you want to direct your children, your godchildren, the people you love, this is the time to do it. We've got John Nichols, national correspondent for The Nation magazine. Oh boy, it is getting hot up in Wisconsin. I know we can talk about these national races, but when I saw that Mandela Barnes has closed that gap with Ron Johnson, and now it is a toss-up, I said, OMG, you said that the debate was a game changer. You said that. You said it before you went off to Germany, telling everybody else about what's going on in America. And it seems like that's what's happened. Talk to me, John Nichols. What's going on up there? I mean, before I can even get to any other races, like, wow. I mean, we could have an upset on our hands.
Well, it's not really an upset.
Okay.
That's the one thing that we need to remember. Ron Johnson was always an incredibly weak candidate.
Ooh.
He has never had 50% approval ratings or anything like that. In fact, Johnson has been a uniquely horrible U.S. senator, a guy who promoted conspiracy theories.
Uniquely horrible?
Yeah, he stands out. He stands out. This is a guy who has promoted conspiracy theories about the election, conspiracy theories about COVID, conspiracy theories about just about anything that comes up. A guy who has said, among other things, that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme and wants to totally restructure how we fund Social Security so it's up for grabs every year. You listeners should pause and think about that for a second. The notion that Social Security would not be a permanent guarantee, but something that Congress would decide on every year. Do we have enough money for it, or do we have to give some new corporate tax break? So when you understand Ron Johnson in that context, he was always vulnerable. But because he is so closely tied to corporate power, so closely tied to Republican insiders, they put aside a huge amount of money to try and reelect him. And after the primary, when Mandela Barnes overwhelmingly won the Democratic primary, they began an attack campaign on Mandela Barnes. Now, Barnes had just gone through his own primary campaign. He had to raise money. He was, vulnerable at that point. And the Republicans came with a massive attack, something that I don't think people in Illinois or in a lot of places could even imagine. This is what you see in battleground states at a presidential level. And that attack on Mandela Barnes, a 4-year-old young black lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, former state legislator, was not just vicious in the usual sense of politics, it was overtly racist. I mean, it sought to diminish and discredit Mandela Barnes in some of the most crass ways, in ways that you'd have to harken back to George Wallace or the backlash campaigns, the late 60s and early 70s. And it had an impact, at least initially. It did knock Mandela Barnes down in the polls. There was a poll a couple weeks ago that had Mandela Barnes down 6 points, with Johnson at 52, Barnes at 46. It looked pretty bad. And then, as Barnes started to participate in the debates and just shred Ron Johnson, showing Barnes' strength, and then as Barnes started to push back, getting the resources he needed, getting up on TV, but also physically going around the state. Mandela Barnes is an incredibly energetic campaigner, an incredibly able campaigner. He started to tick up in the polls, and yesterday we got a poll from CNN, good quality poll, that showed it to be a 1-point race. Johnson at 50, Barnes at 49, and rising. And so, yes, Mandela Barnes can win this race. In fact, the momentum is with him.
What is he saying? I mean, because Republicans nationally, he's been attacked on crime. He's been attacked on defund the police. I mean, true, untrue. He's been attacked on the economy. He's been attacked on these big talking points that Americans are saying these are the issues that even supersede reproductive rights, abortion. We care about abortion, but right now, the economy. Right now, crime.
Yeah.
Right now, inflation. Okay, and yeah, that's right. Abortion also. So what is he doing that is helping him to turn the corner?
Well, the one thing about Mandela Barnes to remember is he has always been focused on the economy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not one of these candidates who has to shift over to the economy because somebody told him, it's a good issue. Some consultant said, you should be talking about inflation and issues like that. Now, Mandela Barnes' first ad was about inflation. And so his message has always been a very consistent one. And that is, he is the son of a third shift auto worker, auto parts worker, and of a Milwaukee public school teacher. He came up in a union family, raised by parents who, got up before dawn to go to teach and who got up, after the sun set to go to work in a factory. And he has focused all of that background, his own background, into a really aggressive advocacy for reindustrialization, for getting the factories back open, for getting the factories of the future opened in Wisconsin, for creating jobs. And he has ripped into Ron Johnson for literally saying he would not fight for jobs in Wisconsin. That's an important thing to understand. Ron Johnson actually said he would not lift a finger to try and get federal resources to create jobs in Wisconsin. Mandela Barnes says that he would. And so I think that in a sense, this campaign has sort of come full circle to exactly where Mandela Barnes is. And if in these closing weeks, Barnes can keep his message up, keep his message there, while also pushing back against Johnson, I think that he's got a real chance to make that connection on these fundamental issues that people really value. He does talk about abortion rights a good deal. In fact, his mother has appeared in his ad talking about her own abortion, and with Mandela Barnes sitting with her as they discuss it. So his family, he is quite frank about these issues and quite focused on them. But I would say that at the heart of Mandela Barnes' campaign is a classic working class appeal. And that's very, very powerful when you're running against a candidate in Ron Johnson who married into a wealthy family, who managed a company for his in-laws, became immensely rich, but then went to the U.S. Senate. And since becoming a U.S. Senator, has doubled his wealth. Imagine that. He was a wealthy man. He became a U.S. Senator. He's supposed to be working for the people. And somehow along the way, he doubled his wealth. So
how did he double his wealth? Did he double his wealth through that insider trading that's legal in Congress?
That's something you'll have to look into. What we know is he went out of his way to lower his own taxes. He literally fought. He even fought against Donald Trump. The only time he ever crossed Donald Trump was because he argued Donald Trump wasn't cutting taxes enough for people like Ron Johnson. And so he succeeded in getting the tax bill rewritten to have special sections of it that were highly beneficial to himself and to his own company. I mean, that's the sort of senator Ron Johnson has been. ProPublica, the investigative research group, did a major study that showed that Ron Johnson used his position to literally fight not just Democrats, but even Republicans to make sure that there would be tax cuts for his largest campaign donors and companies run by people like his largest campaign donors. And so the fact is, Ron Johnson has always been in it for himself. He's a self-dealing U.S. Senator. And that's the sort of stuff that Mandela Barnes has pointed out. Now, Johnson, in attacking Barnes, has lied. He has used racialized mailings and ads. I mean, there's no question the game that Ron Johnson is playing. In counter to that, Mandela Barnes has been very fact-based and very blunt about the fact that, Ron Johnson is a millionaire who does not represent the people of Wisconsin. He represents himself and his campaign donors.
Let me go to Ted from Bensonville before we wrap things up. Ted, you wanted to speak to Mandela Barnes and this Wisconsin Senate race?
I sure can. Good morning, you guys. Great to hear the show, Santita, as
Thank
always.
you, Ted. Sending you much love.
Right back at you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, I heard. I mean, he is a miserable individual. I literally heard a commercial out of Milwaukee yesterday, radio ad, and the tone was just so bad. It was all personal about, 1 year that Mandela Barnes did not file taxes, and then somehow he was able to buy a condo, yet he was living with his parents. This kind of stuff, all personal. It was just, the tone was horrible. I just, made me, they're all horrible, but you could tell everything that you're talking about right here was evident in this radio ad. It was really bad.
But let me ask you this, Ted. Because Stacey Abrams has been upfront about the fact that, hey, she has struggled financially, even, because she had to pay the brilliant woman, but student loans, coming from a family that was not moneyed and all of that. she has struggled. And then when you finally make some money, what happens, particularly with black and brown people who don't come from, who are really, if they go to college, they're the first. It's just, I can't buy a house. I got to help take care of my family. I might have to send a brother or sister or family members to school. People are juggling a whole lot of stuff. Do you think that is making a difference with the American voter now, Ted? That people are saying, "Look, I got financial problems too, so I don't want to hear it."
Yeah, I think. Hey, I wanted to add one thing while you were saying that right there. I just wanted to add that, I think we remember all the Asian immigrants here in Chicagoland. A lot of us, and I would be Italian and Polish. There's like first generation of graduating college too. You'd be surprised. It's almost kind of like it's a similar story with them with that.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's my great grandfather's story. Yep.
Yeah, and but it's funny. So when I think, Santita, when I think of how I'm going to change the world, like your great theme song, I say, I'd like to be a politician running. And I would come up and I'd go, hey, I don't have any great giant credentials. Yeah, I eventually graduated and got my degree, and I got my family I'm grateful for, and I raised them. I got no special, all the accolades that these people come with, and then they don't do anything. You're right. Normal people, get some normal people in there who have risen up themselves. And they're going to do a better job, right?
Ted, let me give you the lyrics to this song before I pitch it, but stay right here before I pitch it back to John Nichols. There's a song that was popularized by a great gospel singer who's passed on to glory now. Her name was Danny Bell Hall. I first saw her with Andre Crouch and the Disciples when I was a little girl. Just ordinary people. God uses plain old ordinary people. He uses people like me and you who are willing to do everything that he commands. He uses people who will give their all, no matter how small their all may seem to be, because little becomes much when you place it in the master's hand. Do not diminish your contribution, Ted, because it's extraordinary. If you were not extraordinary, you would not be here. Okay?
Hey, thanks a lot. And that's why you have so many fans, is because that's how you make people feel. That's fantastic. Thanks a lot.
Oh, look, we're all pilgrim travelers, honey. We're all brothers and sisters. We come from the same parent up in the sky.
and I love how you referred to music, because music just transcends all of it, doesn't it? It's so great.
You know what? I'm going to pull out this album. I promised to do it. I got permission from Senator Orrin Hatch just before he passed. An album I did with him, and I'm going to start playing it because we got some good music out of it. Absolutely.
Yeah, let's hear some Santita recordings any day. Absolutely.
Oh, my sweetie, and let's let you run for office, Ted. Now, see, this is what we need, John, Ted, because I want you to stay, because I want you to be able to say goodbye when we get off the air to John Nichols. John Nichols, the last 2.5 minutes, they belong to you. I mean, it seems like these ad hominem attacks, they're not working the same way. I mean, in either direction.
I mean, they do work initially if they're not countered. This is one of the things that Democrats forget. When you just get attacked, people will start to, think there must be something there. And so it's really important to have, any campaign has to be a dialogue, right? You got to push back on things that are false. But Ted gets to a point that's really important. One of the reasons Mandela Barnes, I think, is going to win this race, despite having really struggled in it, is because one of the things he has said from the start is, if you want to change the Senate, you have to change the people you send to the Senate.
Yes.
And he has pointed out very bluntly in his ads, very bluntly in his campaigning, that the Senate is a millionaires club. Most senators are millionaires. And one thing that Mandela Barnes said to me in an interview not too long ago was, if he is elected to the United States Senate, he will collapse the average income in the Senate. He will come into the Senate as one of the most working class people to be there ever, because he is not rich. He does not have a lot of money. He's not funding his own campaign in any sense. He's funding his campaign with small donations, and it has gotten him to this point. So if he gets elected to the U.S. Senate, he will not go to the Senate as somebody who's indebted to political power or who's interested in enriching himself. He will go to the U.S. Senate as a working class person, a proudly working class person who identifies as such and who wants to fight in the Senate to make sure that people can join unions and improve their situation, make sure that people have good education, good health care, and, as I mentioned early on, who will absolutely never cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid, who will increase and expand those programs. That's the kind of message I think that people want to hear right now, because we are in a vulnerable place. Our economy is not where it should be. And Mandela Barnes does not run around and tell people, oh, it's great because there's a Democratic president. What he tells people is that if he gets elected to the Senate, he will stand up to Democrats and Republicans to make sure that the economy works for the working class.
John Nichols, everybody, national correspondent for The Nation magazine. Can you just stay with me for a hot second? I just want you to be able to say goodbye to Ted and give him a word of encouragement, because you know what, everybody? America works when you work it. Have money, have no money. If you want to run for office, if it's on your heart to do that, then you go on and do that. You have something to offer. You have something to bring to that experience that no one else can bring. Whether you're broke, near broke, on your way to being broke, it doesn't even matter. What matters is that you get in the conversation and you change the narrative. You change the conversation. Because when we get involved, everything will change. All of these revolutions in this country have been led by ordinary people who are willing to get in the fight. Get in the fight. Get in it. It's our fight. We're one people, everybody. Might not feel that way, might not look that way, but we are. Love you, everybody. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. Stay right here. John, would you please say something? I don't know if, Ted, are you still there?
Yes.
Ted, you touched me so, because I just want you to know that you really, really do matter. You really, really, really do. You do.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Well, Santita, I'm flattered you got on personally with me. Thanks a lot. Hey, I happen to be a lifelong musician, too. I've even sent you a couple of my songs. Yeah, my real name is Keith. You know, I come on as Ted. I have for many years, but my name is Keith Fallico, and I'm a singer-songwriter, and I'm actually so gratefully retired now. I listen to you every morning. You know, earning it. Me, my wife, and my two sons are grown now and married. You know, I have these beautiful new daughter-in-laws. They both have homes. And I am living, you know, I gave to Caesar what was Caesar's for so many years, and I am just living out an unbelievable dream here of, you know, getting myself lost in my music and music in general, and listening to shows like you, and really believing. You know, I even have, you know, I pray only for God's, you know, will, greater knowledge of God's will for me, right? More power to carry it out.
Amen.
And he has led me, you know, I shouldn't say God has led me on an unbelievable path. And, you know, you do look back and you go, wow, I can't believe how God got me through these things. And the main thing is if people would just have the gratitude, right? And the acceptance, just gratitude for what they have. And I know it's tough, and it is a tough world. And, you know, I'm a guy, just what I said, I eventually made it through college. You know, I left after 3 years when I was young, came back in my 40s and got my degree, and then even got 19 years of a master's. I was going to teach, but teaching is so tough. I ran back to the business world, Santita, because I saw what a tough job teaching is. My son is a math teacher now. I'm very proud of him. And, you know, so I listened to your show, and it's tough because, you know, in my circle, Santita, you know, my guys, my other white guys, as I'll say, you know, I mean, I can't talk with any of them before they start popping off politically and then breaking my heart, because I want to just, you know, be positive and try to, you know, I have so much faith in the young people, and I want to be positive. And, you know, my own kind of people, they talk all this kind of crap, and I'm just not interested in that, you know. And definitely music and family are so much supersede, I think, politics or religion, you know, where you don't even want to start talking religion and politics if they're with music and family. You know, music goes beyond it. Family goes beyond it. This is just my little way I live. But, hey, part of my life is your show. You are fantastic. And I got to tell you, man, I will tell you, you know, I am there. I am not there now, I think, where you think I might be. But in my young mid-20s, mid-80s, I was there sitting in a room all alone. And I heard your dad say, I am somebody. I am somebody. And I rode that, Santita, along with a lot of other things, all the way through my life to success. So I will never forget your dad. And I love hearing you on the radio because it reminds me of him, and it shows me that whatever people, oh yeah, Jesse Jackson, he never saw a television camera he didn't love, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many times did you hear that one? But now here's evidence of him raising an incredible family, certainly an incredible daughter, and I get to hear that you every day, and you're a musician, a beautiful singer, and I will tell you, songwriters on the planet. I'm not.
Give me a
known.
song there. I'm looking.
What's that?
I'm looking for music.
If you could, all right, if I could just, all I have to do is give you my real name, and you could go to my YouTube and hear them.
Okay. Okay.
And that's just Keith. Yeah, it's Keith Fallico. The last name is F as in Frank. A-L-L.
A-C-O. I-C-O. Oh, Fallico. Okay.
I-C-O. F-A-L-L-I-C-O.
Okay.
The first songs you'll see there, Santita, is this. I'm on a bucket list journey right now, going down to Nashville and recording songs with the Beard at Beard Music. Man, the Beard family. Larry Beard is a country music Hall of Fame fiddler, and his son Eli is a living legend on bass. And these studio musicians still are like the song Nashville Cats from 60 years ago. They get there at 9 o'clock in the morning. They do these incredible sessions. They make your song sound like $1 million, and it's been incredible. So that's my simple life. I'm just so grateful. Every morning I start my day with you, and I get lost in my music, and I drop to my knees and thank God for my wife and sons and my daughters-in-law and family and life. That's it. Thanks for listening to all that.
Oh, you have moved me greatly. I mean, look, you don't have to be black to have been moved by that message. I mean, John Nichols, you're still there?
Yes, I still am.
I met John. John was this, well, we were all kids then. This young white kid who my parents used to worry after because he looked like a little baby and he was little more than that. And he decided he wanted to come out and campaign for Jesse Jackson. My parents were like, do you have a permission slip? It's, you know what?
Yeah.
We've racialized our issues in America. But the fact is we are one people. That's the beauty of America.
Yeah.
It really, really
We
is.
better be.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is. It's
And I
true.
think that what Ted's saying here is so important because I think that when we talk about Reverend Jackson's contribution, right, I think probably more people saw him early on in all places. In the old show, you remember the show Lou Grant?
Yeah.
Yeah. You remember that Ed Asner, who was a very, very progressive figure, very influential on that show. He had Jesse Jackson on that show.
That's right.
Remember, they had a whole show that was dedicated to Jesse Jackson. I think going to a high school.
It was the Push
giving
Excel
IM.
rallies. That's right. He did
Exactly.
that. He featured him there. But you know what? The last week of in furtherance of your point, the last week of Phil Donahue shows, he started on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and he went from his 5th most frequent guest to Friday, his most frequent guest. Reverend was the Thursday guest. He was his 2nd most frequent guest. And as we're pulling together pieces of my father's life, our father's life, dad's life, I said, we can't forget Phil Donahue because what Phil Donahue did was mainstream Reverend because he was the biggest talk show host in America.
Yeah.
And he put him before.
And another very progressive.
Very progressive, very progressive. He even did a special on Reverend during the campaign. You remember that in '83, so that America could hear him unfiltered. And so we have had, and I've had the weekend with David Wallace, my father's best friend from the University of Chicago, a white guy from Kentucky. He and Gary Massoni, who you remember. You know what?
Sure.
I've just had the privilege of, I was around interracial marriages. Early on, my Uncle Calvin Morris was married to a white woman. So these things were never odd to me. We just loved people. And if we were all on the same side, given there was such a minority of us involved, my parents, people involved in the civil rights movement and all of that, we were just seeing life from the same perspective. From a similar place, bringing different perspectives to the table. My father's longest serving staff member was a white man Frank Watkins.
Well, and our great dear friend Steve Cobble.
Steve
who
Cobble.
was, you know,
Oh my!
at every turn. And I think it's fair to say Steve was about as bright as you get.
He was our guy.
Down in southern New Mexico. Yeah.
I mean,
and this is the thing.
That's it.
Well, this is what the Reverend meant by the rainbow, right? You know, and that I still hold that if America is going to make it, if America is going to see itself through all the challenges, and boy, these are about the most divided times in our history. Pretty close to the most painful, some of the most painful times, not the most, but some of them. If we're going to make it through all this, and we're going to make it to the other side, it is by reconnecting with that concept of the rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I will tell you, having seen it play out in Iowa and New Hampshire, in rural places, people love that concept that they are part of the rainbow, right? And the rainbow welcomes them in. So much of our politics pushes people out, says, well, you're in this camp or you're in that camp. The rainbow says, no, you're part of something with everybody else. And I can tell you, you can find a rural farmer who has maybe rarely in his life met a black person or an Asian American person or an Arab American person. You put that farmer in a community, right, where suddenly he is or she is part of the rainbow and seen as such, a valuable part of it. It transforms the way they think about politics. It transforms the way they think about, you know, society. And I can't tell you how many times I saw that in 84 and 88. Last thing I'll mention on this is that, you know, when Reverend was nominated at the convention, I think in 84, he had several people nominating him. One of the people that nominated him was Merle Hansen, who was a farmer from Newman, Nebraska. And Merle Hansen, you never met a more rural person than Merle Hansen. And to hear that sort of gravelly Nebraska, small town Nebraska voice up there from the podium of the Democratic National Convention on television in front of tens of millions of people, you know, talking about Jesse Jackson. I mean, that was a beautiful thing. And, you know, we don't talk about politics very often these days as something beautiful, but we ought to. We ought to get back to that. And I think Ted and others remind us that when politics is beautiful, when it is moving, it can transform lives.
And it does. And that's what it's supposed to do. You know, so, I mean, somewhere out there, you know, someone else like Ted heard, because you don't know what people are going through at home. You don't know. And a lot of white people live under the boot of oppression. And they feel like they've been treated like they're nothing. This is not for black people only.
The sense that you're treated as you're nothing, right?
Yeah.
And you're kind of, that maybe you don't have a chance. That, you can go one of two ways with that, right? You can go to the light, right? You can, you know, hear those wonderful words from the Bible. Yeah, I will give you the morning star, right?
Yes.
You know, or you can look at that and go toward it. Or your bitterness, your sense of abandonment leads you to go toward the authoritarian, the tough guy, the strong person who says that, yes, Donald Trump says, only I can solve your problems, right? You know, from tens of millions of people, there are paths that you can take, one path or the other. And if they hear something that is beautiful and inspiring and hopeful, they may go to that. But they have to hear it. It has to be there. And that's why when history writes the story of Jesse Jackson, they will say that it was the Reverend Jackson who went out there invariably, in fight after fight, challenge after challenge, who raised that morning star, right? Who said, you know, I want you to come to this light. I want you to recognize that, you know, you can be a part of something better than yourself, and better than you imagined, you know, that you can actually, you know, connect in ways that you didn't know. There's that wonderful line from, I think it's the second epistle of General Peter, where he says, and the day star rise in your hearts. I mean, you know, that notion that suddenly inside of you, there is something beautiful. And I think Reverend Jackson did that. And I think Ted speaks to that, and you do. So many of us, I hope, do, because politics shouldn't be ugly. It should be beautiful, and it has been. We're very lucky, you and I. We've seen it in that way.
Yeah, and we've seen the love.
Yeah.
And I think that's what kind of you, because you halt between two roads when you've been under the boot, when you've been abused. And if you find the love, you go to the love. If you find the bitterness, you go in that direction too. And that's just the way it is. Oh no, please.
That's just the simplest equation in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you're Winston Churchill, who I'm not always the biggest fan of, but Winston Churchill always said, if you're going through hell, keep going, right? Don't stop. You keep moving to get out of it. And so our instinct when we are in a difficult position is to move, right? Mm-hmm. To move in some direction so that we can hopefully get to a better place for ourselves. Now, if the person saying, yeah, move this way, is somebody who is, destructive, is harmful, you may still move that way because, you have to get out of the tough place you're in. But if the person who is asking you to move is trying to get you to go to a positive place, to go to the light, to go to something hopeful, I mean, then there's a good chance you will do that. And I think that so much of what is good and possible in our lives comes in a moment, right? It comes by chance. We hear something on a Phil Donahue show or on Lou Grant or on, in some place, or at a rally or in a church or in a union hall, and it touches our heart, our eyes in your heart, and we move toward it. But if we don't hear that, if we don't get that, then we can be lost. Mm-hmm. And we're talking today about Mandela Barnes. I can promise you that no matter what happens in the Wisconsin Senate race, the campaign that Mandela Barnes has run, where he has gone to all 72 counties, to farms and small towns, and really, brought a rainbow-style campaign to the whole state of Wisconsin, where he's fought for workers who have threatened with losing their jobs, where he is, when he shows up at a union hall, because he grew up in union halls, he asks, where are people doing the work? Are there people packing up bags of food for these striking workers? Well, let me go and help them pack the bags of food. That's what he did on Labor Day. This is a different kind of candidate. He is a candidate deeply rooted in this notion of hope, in this notion of possibility. And there will be people 50 years from now who will say, I was inspired by what Mandela Barnes did. Mm-hmm. And so that's why, I think there is hope in this candidacy. And that's why if he wins, he will be a transformational United States Senator. Not Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, anything like that. He will be transformational because in his persona, in his style, in his approach, he will communicate that working class people who don't make enough money to file taxes some years, right? Working class people can end up in the United States Senate. That's an amazing thing.
Amen. Amen. Politics ought to be transformational because politics,
yep.
You elect politicians who are public servants. That's not a dirty word, everybody. We are the ones who have to make the system work for us. And it should be a compassionate, merciful system that works for everyone, rich, poor, people who are working, people who are not working, people who are well, people who are unwell, people who are trying to get well, people who are on their way to sickness. The world should work for everybody. And we need to grow up in our politics and grow up in our ways of relating to each other and thinking of each other so that we will be compassionate toward everybody, whatever their circumstance, whether they sit high or are rising up out of the depths. We all matter, and we all fit here somewhere. And I thank God for you. I thank God for you, John, for all of the work and just for the grace and the love that you spread every single day. I just thank God for you.
You were very sweet, and I thank God for you. And I'll tell you, today, you got another reminder of why this show is so important.
Huh.
What
Well,
this
you
show
make it
can do.
important. You make it important. And every time someone comes to my father and says, I listen to your daughter's show or I watch it, and I love that John Nichols. So wait a minute. Yeah, I need you. I'm not kidding. He said, wait. He said, John's a regular on your show. I said, yes. I said, jealous. I'm
Well,
serious. That was
I'm
his
glad
reaction.
Glad to be back from traveling and back with you.
Oh, that was his reaction. He said, John's a regular on your show. Are you serious? I said, yeah.
Where else would I be?
Oh.
Where else would I be?
No, but you honor us, and I thank you. I thank you for bringing love to the conversation and making love and God who is love. Thank you for putting God at the center of it all, and for making God matter, for making love matter. And I just thank you for that. Thank you for putting it at the center of your politics and at the center of who you are.
I appreciate that. Well, I've got my book of Psalms right here, so
All right.
Ready to start the day.
Well, everyone, he's also a lay preacher. So just so that you know, he's everything but ordained. Hello. So there we go.
Oh, it's a long way to go. But
there's that piece.
It's a pleasure. It's very, very pleasant. And I think it's, what is it? Psalm 133, how good and how pleasant it is for brethren of the Lord to gather. It is very pleasant to be with someone where you can talk about religion in a comfortable and hopeful way.
Oh, yeah. And hopefully in an inclusive way, because I'm mindful of the fact that there are agnostics who listen, there are atheists who listen. I just want you to walk away feeling better and hopefully becoming better than how we all were when we started. I just want to thank everyone in this audience for, because we've become family through this pandemic. And I thank God that that this wonderful group of people embraced me and embraced each other. And we all meet up first thing in the morning, and we've come to depend upon each other and lean upon each other. And I thank God for them, and I thank God for you. As I sought to build this show, you lent your support, and I've just, with all of my heart, I want to express my gratitude while I'm here on Facebook Live, and I can tell everyone, when you're building a show, you don't quite know, you just have to start. You don't know I didn't know where I was going, what I was doing. But there were one or two people upon whom I was able to call who gave me their unfettered, unconditional support. And John is one of those persons. And I can count them on this hand and have fingers left over. And I just want to thank you with all of my heart. I thank you and I love you. So there's that.
Love you too. Be strong today.
Oh, hey, you too. And I'll be calling you before the week is out, because I want to go over some of these other campaigns. Because, when we come back, I want, because I want to have more time to talk, because they've all tightened up. Are you going to watch the Fetterman debate tonight? I know you're going to write about it tomorrow, right? Maybe.
I love that Oz race. It's one of the funnest races to watch.
Oh boy,
we'll watch it. And look, here's the bottom line: is all these races are close. All these races are tough. They could all go bad. If they do, then Joe Biden will be the lamest of lame duck presidents. He will have no power, or very little power, even as a president of the United States. On the other hand, if they go as they could easily go in a positive direction, Joe Biden could finally have the power to do everything that he set out to do at the start of his presidency. That's what a big deal this is. It's literally, it will define where we go as a nation over not just the next 2 years. If Biden can have these next 2 years with a Senate that is on his side, with a House that is on his side, and that's hard to do. But if he has that, and if they really are supporting him, we can get that child tax credit as something permanent. We can get an expansion of Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid permanent. And we can get an expansion of caregiving so that elderly folks and people with disabilities don't have to leave their homes. They can get care in their homes and really make it. This is so transformational, and it's all in the offering. But November 8th is going to decide it one way or the other. And so yeah, we shouldn't belabor it now. It's getting late in the morning. We have things to do, but we should recognize that as the days go on, there are many things to talk about as regards these races for especially the Senate.
Okay. Well, we're going to do that, but I'll reach out to you by text because I'd like to get your take on what's happening in North Carolina. Certainly, what happens with this debate tonight. What's happening in California. I mean, everything, there's just a lot going on. And I think that we need to know what the stakes are for those of us who might even be teeter-tottering as to whether to vote or not. I think that people need to understand what the stakes are, John.
Oh, yeah. Well, they are high.
They're high. They're very, very high. So have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. May God bless you real good. My love to your family, my family. God bless.
And to your family, my family as well.
Absolutely. Give Dad a call when you can.
I will.
Okay. Thanks so much. Love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye. Thank you, Jewel, for a great show.